There have been a few big fat lies in the last 18 months. 3 weeks to flatten the curve. Remember that one? Or what about at the start of the pandemic, in March 2020, when government ministers spoke about being concerned around the economic cost of shutting the economy down for 3 whole weeks? 3 weeks was a worry at that time. And yet, here we are, 18 months later, after 3 national lockdowns, and with the government signing itself another 6-month blank cheque to lock us down once again and inflict further damage. To potentially close schools again, close businesses again, close the NHS again, and to wreck lives once again. Notwithstanding the damage to public health, the economy, to businesses and to livelihoods, one question that's never been asked in the course of this pandemic is why it's okay to wreck lives. Is human damage ever justified, particularly for a disease which is non-fatal to almost everyone? So 3 weeks to flatten the curve was a big whopper, but there are many more examples. Data, not dates, another classic. When cases were falling, we stayed locked down. So in the end, the opposite was true. It was dates, not data, or more accurately, it was politics, not data. Perhaps the biggest lie of them all is follow the science. Because there's no one science to follow. The science is not settled on whether lockdowns have the desired effect. The science is not definitive around masks. And the science is not united around the idea that the vaccines are a silver bullet that will fix everything. We have followed the science of junk modelling, which predicted 500,000 deaths at the start of the pandemic. Doomsday modelling has shaped this ruinous COVID policy, and so much of what was predicted never came to pass. We followed the science on the 10 p.m. curfew for pubs. Do you remember that? Early in the pandemic, sending people home from the pub at this random hour, supposedly because COVID comes out late in the evening. Bit of a night owl, that COVID. Enjoys a lock-in. We were following the science with the 10 p.m. curfew, except there was no science to back up that policy. There is no definitive science to back up the effectiveness of face coverings on kids in the classroom or even on school closures themselves. But debatable science we followed anyway. And today, when there is a clear message from the JCVI that vaccinating to 12 to 15-year-olds is not worth the risk, this is the moment at which the government, doubtless pressured by teaching unions and jab-happy interest groups, have in broad daylight decided to ignore the science. They've been warned against it by the organisation whose job it is to advise on vaccines, but they're going to vaccinate anyway, which means that the term follow the science is now the biggest political lie since George Bush Sr. said, read my lips, no new taxes. After this, don't ever let the government use the word science as a fig leaf for their failed policies. And don't let the scientists who got this wrong do the same. With this decision, the government, which we're told loves to follow the science, has now unfollowed the science, seemingly because it didn't take them where they wanted to go. Read my lips, no jabs for kids. A talented young footballer is being investigated by the Football Association for a tweet he sent when he was 14 years old. Middlesbrough defender Mark Dolan has been charged with aggravated misconduct for comments he made on social media 9 years ago. The 23-year-old left-back is alleged by the FA to have posted a reference to sexual orientation in 2012 when he was 14. A few things here. Haven't the FA got better things to do than investigate the teenage tweets of a soccer star? Surely they should be focused on what they do best, getting youngsters playing football, making facilities available in deprived communities and investing smartly in the football infrastructure so that the beautiful game is available to all. And rolling out a set of policies that might eventually see England win the Euros or even the World Cup. They shouldn't be wasting time trawling through the social media history of a defender. That's indefensible. Now, what this young man tweeted was doubtless pretty offensive, and I'm sure he regrets it. But it was almost a decade ago. He was 14 years of age. When you're 14 years of age, it's your job to say and do stupid things. It's your job to make mistakes. It's your job to be a prize numpty. That's what 14 is. Because it's only when reflecting on those mistakes that you learn, develop, grow, and become a better person. People's history on social media should never be hanging over them like the sword of Damocles. A novelist, a comedian, or a songwriter might have created a great piece of work which 10, 15, 20 years ago was perfectly acceptable, but is now wide of the mark due to changing attitudes. Should they now be punished in some way? Of course not. You can't backdate today's moral and social values into the past. Jennifer Saunders, Dawn French, John Cleese and Ricky Gervais have all said that they couldn't now make the kind of comedy that they made back in the day. I've got skin in that game. I used to present a hidden camera comedy series for Channel 4 called Balls of Steel. The outrageous pranks played on that show would never be allowed now. And more's the pity, it was watched and loved by millions. Should the comedians involved in that show now be investigated for comedy made 15 years ago that wasn't just acceptable then, but enthusiastically watched and loved? Kevin Hart, the wonderful comedian, performed a comedy routine years ago about how awkward he would be if he found out his son was gay. Now, this was a very clever and satirical piece of comedy in which he was lampooning his own outdated values when it came to same-sex relationships. But this didn't wash with the committee at the Academy Awards, who parted company with Kevin Hart as host of the Oscars that year. Unless a crime has been committed, I really don't think that any of this historical stuff should cancel a career or destroy someone's livelihood, especially not if they were 14 when they did it. What does a 14-year-old know about the world? When I was 14, I was an expert in sleeping all day long, getting out of doing homework, watching too much telly and picking my nose. And it's not just unfair, but profoundly worrying to think that this current generation of youngsters, who of course are all online, could see their lives ruined as a result of what they currently do on Instagram, TikTok or Twitter. There's only one crime that's been committed here in this story, and it's a crime against common sense. This crazy kangaroo court can hop right off. This sort of digital McCarthyism is counterproductive and potentially very damaging for those involved. This nonsense is a serious own goal from the football authorities and should be shown the red card.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.